Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, Movie Reviews with Connections in Mind, and welcome to my second reaction series on my channel. The first one I started was to react to episodes of Season 2 of The Orville, and this one I'm going to be doing a reaction video for every episode in Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. It's just going to be a short form series where I'm just going to give you my thoughts on the episodes as they come out as soon as possible, as well as some analysis as to things that may seem familiar in certain episodes and where you may have seen them before. So, with that being said, without further ado, let's get into Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 1, entitled Brother, in which we see Michael Burnham is dragged into a quest by Captain Christopher Pike of the USS Enterprise to investigate an anomaly caused by who knows what, and all we know is that it's not the Klingons because they are equally puzzled by this, and it seems the main conflict of this this season will be both the mysterious identity of these anomalies and what their purpose may be, as well as Michael Burnham's relationship with her adopted or her foster brother Spock. And this conflict is seen briefly, or at least alluded to, in flashback form in this episode, where we see Michael Burnham as a young child being welcomed into the household of Sarek and Amanda Grayson, who and a very young Spock essentially rejecting Michael Burnham. So there's definitely tension there from their early childhoods, and this anomaly was on the flip side of that, this anomaly is powerful enough to cripple the Enterprise, and Captain Christopher Pike essentially becomes the new captain of the USS Discovery. In fact, that becomes permanent at the end of this episode, and we get to see what will happen in with this crew and as with Captain Pike as its captain as the season goes on. And some things that I noted were a little familiar. It was stated early in the late in season 1, but also in this episode, that Discovery was on its way to Vulcan to pick up its new commanding officer, but Christopher Pike is newly assigned to be the captain of the Discovery. Very similar to Star Trek: The Motion Picture, in which Admiral James T. Kirk takes over command of the newly refitted Enterprise from its newly minted commander, Captain Decker. So there's an interesting comparison there. Another potential similarity would be, I mean, it's more of a brief little homage per se, would be the fact that when Discovery discovers the first anomaly, or its aftermath, I should say, it's in the middle of a vast asteroid field, and there's a crashed Starfleet ship on one of the larger fragments of the asteroid, and Discovery must send in 4 pods to get to this crashed Starfleet ship and rescue any survivors that are there. And navigating through this asteroid field is very treacherous, of course, and it's very similar to Star Trek Into Darkness, with Kirk and Khan doing the similar thing there. And also, speaking of that debris field, there's another very similar to Star Trek 2009, with the Discovery dropping out of warp into a very large asteroid debris field and very nearly causing a collision, and in fact causing a collision in one instance as well. Not very surprising that there are some homages there, since there's been several style similarities between the Star Trek Discovery and the Kelvin universe Star Trek films, namely Star Trek 2009, Star Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Beyond. Finally, just a brief, I'm sure this wasn't necessarily intentional, or it may have been, but when Michael Burnham is piloting one of these pods through this debris field, she briefly says, "We've got debris," and Commander Connolly from the Enterprise was basically saying, "No kidding." That really reminded me of Twister when Bill Paxton is having to navigate through the debris of the Twister, and his wife is just like, "We got debris," and it's like, really? So there's an interesting comparison there. Those are just some of my brief thoughts as to where you may have seen it before. This episode, it definitely redefined the focus of the season, which a good season opener should. We're definitely shifting away from the politics of the Klingons, or we may see them again, judging by the season 2 preview going forward. But this seems to be more focused on a very alien threat, and that should be interesting to watch, as well as the dynamic between Michael Burnham and Spock, which they had alluded to in season 1 in brief instances, but we'll really delve deep into a part of Spock's life that we've never seen before. The earliest we've seen Spock in earlier Star Trek canon would be, barring the Kelvin timeline, would be in The Cage, which was from the original series of Star Trek, with Captain Christopher Pike. And this was set, this episode of Star Trek Discovery is set theoretically before The Cage. It's not necessarily clear as to when, but it is definitely set before The Cage, and it would seem to imply that Spock is not quite the in-control Vulcan officer that we know him in Star Trek going forward. So that'll be an interesting thing. However, that kind of, as with many prequel series, it kind of robs the direness of any situation that you may put Spock in, because we know Spock's going to survive at this point. And since Michael Burnham is never really mentioned anywhere in the Star Trek canon prior to this, in fact, she isn't. She was a new character created for Star Trek Discovery. It is very likely that by the time this series ends, most likely Michael Burnham will die at some point. And of course, they're kind of teasing that in the season 2 preview. So that's kind of what we're going to go through here, and I just thought that it's an interesting twist. It'll be interesting to see where they go, but it doesn't really hook me per se. Unlike the season 1 opener of Star Trek Discovery, I thought that was fascinating to see with the Klingon War that we had heard about but never really seen. So that was very exciting to see, and that hooked me in. So this season 2 opener is not really hooking me as well as the first season. And also the humor, I feel like they're dialing up the humor a little bit for this, at least in this episode in particular, trying to shift in tone a little bit to a little more lighthearted, maybe. And the humor, it really doesn't work that much. I mean, there are 3 or 4 good jokes in there that they just don't land at all, and either they were just kind of like whatever, or they're more like, what the hell was that? And not in a good way. So that element of this episode did not work at all for me. But overall, I'd say that this episode gave me at least a taste of what I can expect going forward, as it should have. And it gives me enough to say that I'm interested to see where they take this season going forward, but it doesn't put me on as firm a foundation as the season 1 opening did. So those are my thoughts on Star Trek Discovery season 2 episode 1. If you let me know down in the comments if you agree, disagree, if I missed anything in my analysis. What did you think of the episode? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to check in for my reaction videos for the other episodes of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, as well as, if you're interested, check out my reaction videos of the Orville Season 2. And also this weekend of January 17th, 18th, be sure to look for my review of Glass, which will be coming out this in the coming days. So there you have it. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. And just remember, there is nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.